What's up, ladies and germs? David here, coming to you live from the front seat of my car. And man, we have a controversy on our hands in the upcoming release of The Last of Us 2, that highly anticipated video game that overtly loved franchise that was The Last of Us, that came out back in 2013. That game that we all played. No doubt if you're watching this, no doubt you're familiar. No doubt you've played Last of Us. And man, the overwhelming response to that game was positive, right? And it wasn't just the gameplay mechanics. It wasn't just the graphical, rendering of the environments that we were so impressed with. It was the story. It was the narrative wherein we were drawn, right? We were drawn into this story. And it resonated. It rang true. The issues involved rang true. The values, if you will, which the narrative plot exemplified, the values of surrogate father, surrogate daughter. When it would seem that the world is poisoned, when it would seem that all is ruined, the whole backdrop of the plague apocalypse and the ruin of mankind on the earth. When death is paramount, when death is preeminent, and people are and those that remain, are crawling, are pressing through the entanglement of difficulty. The game offers to us a view of what matters. Ultimately, in the end, it's a value statement in that it suggests what matters is for Joel to fulfill his role as a father. Objectively, as a man, what brings him fulfillment, what brings him healing from his broken life, is to project his role as a father. And Ellie, the surrogate daughter, finds in Joel the father that she didn't have. That Joel becomes for her a kind of compass, a kind of centering, a kind of security. The confidence to move forward. The confidence to rise up on her own 2 feet and fight against the struggles of life. The two of them together. They are sort of made complete. In a way, they are sort of made whole in their roles as father and as daughter. And this is what resonated with us, was it not? And it would seem that it is this rejection of the original premise in which The Last of Us 2 offers a kind of a kind of rejection of the original premise, wherein people are offended, right? Because the whole plot synopsis has been leaked, right, before the game's even out. And there is controversy around what this game is going to be. And I think it is because this Last of Us 2 is sort of it's a reversal of fortunes. It's sort of the polar opposite of the first game in terms of the character arcs, in terms of what is being presented to us. And so for here going forward, I got to just offer to you that there's no doubt probably going to be some spoilers that I'm going to drop regarding The Last of Us 2. So if you're not here for the spoilers, then maybe you shouldn't watch this. Anyway, and I'm not going to go over all of the spoilers, because there's plenty of videos out there that already do that. But really what I want to address here is why we are offended. Why there is such a sentiment wherein people are like, man, I'm not even going to buy that game. I'm going to save that $60 for some. People are calling the dev who leaked the story and the plot and the footage, the game footage. People are like talking like, man, not all heroes wear capes, right? People are like spotting the dude like, dude, props to you. And it must be the case, may I add as a side note, it must be the case that there must have been something toxic going on there in that work environment in which this developer was so moved to act against the better interests of his employer. I'm not advocating that employees can just step all over everyone else's interests, for their own selfish promotion. But it would seem to me, man, my sister is a game developer. She's been in that business for 20 years. And so we talk about what goes on in studios but needless to say, it would seem to me that there must have been something more going on in that studio than just disputes over pay. And if it was ultimately a dispute over pay, then it must have been that the dispute over pay was the last straw. Something, man, to keep in mind when we talk about this, when we think about these issues regarding Naughty Dog. It must be the case, man, that work environment, man, must have sucked. But let's move on. So what we got here is Last of Us 2 coming out in a few weeks from now. And what we understand at this point is that Joel and Ellie are not the primary characters going forward. In fact, Joel isn't even a playable character in The Last of Us 2. And in fact, the central protagonist in The Last of Us 2 is a overly masculine chick named Abby, and it's supposed that possibly Abby is a tranny. But the point being is that the central protagonist in the new Last of Us 2 game kills Joel somewhere around the beginning of the game. And Abby and Ellie are at odds throughout the game, and you play as Abby in the game. And so this is sort of the meat. This is sort of the grits of why people are vexed over this, why people are rejecting this, and I want to talk about, what it is. Because some people will say that, it's just, man, all of the freaking incel homophobes that don't like the fact that Ellie is a lesi and frickin' Abby is a trans, and that's what this is about. That's what the pushback is about. And I think that's rather convenient for the developers, for the creators of the game to be like, oh yeah, it's just the homophobes that don't like what we're doing. I would like to say that, no, it's not. Because it's not who the characters are that is the problem. It's how you use the characters in your game that makes a statement. In the first game, it wasn't that Joel in a role of a father and Ellie in the role of a daughter is what was so appealing about it. It's not to prefer a father over a mother. It's not to prefer a daughter over a brother. But it's that natural relation, that objectively natural relationship of a father and a daughter that was so tactilely investing for us in playing the game. And it resonated, did it not, as essential. It resonated, did it not, as primary and real and substantive. And so when you kill Joel in the second game with your new protagonist, a tranny, it seems to be antithetical to your original premise. You seem to be making a statement, are you not, Naughty Dog? Are you not making a statement in what you are doing with these characters? That is what people are vexed over, man. That's what people are bugged about. It's not because you have a game with a tranny in it. It's not because Ellie is a lesbian. That's not what bugs people. It's how you are unpackaging these characters, how you are using these characters to further your plot. That is what people are upset about. Right? That's what the pushback is about. Because there's other games with quote-unquote identity politics characters, and there isn't the outrage, there isn't the pushback. There isn't the disinvestment with your franchise. Right? It's easy. It's how you are messaging to us. That is, I think, what it is that we find fault with. So, a video game, like other forms of expression, is a kind of work of art. It's like a novel. It's like a painting. It's like music. It's a statement. Ayn Rand, in what I personally think is her best literary work, The Romantic Manifesto. I tell you what, man, there are things that Ayn Rand had to say that were kind of soapbox preaching. She kind of got up on her high horse at times. Wasn't impressed with everything, man, that spilled out of that chick's mouth. But I'll tell you what, man, the Romantic Manifesto is a triumph of thought. But in the Romantic Manifesto, Ayn Rand makes she's talking about art and how we process it and the meaning that art has in our lives. Art, Anne says, is a selective recreation of reality according to an artist's metaphysical values. And by values, she means, that which is deemed to be important as regards the nature of man, as regards the nature of the universe in which man lives. Thus, an artist's metaphysical values represent their assessment of life, or how the artist sees life to be, or how the artist believes life ought to be. Therefore, there is a statement at play. One of the examples that she gives in her book is the idea of a painting of a woman in a red dress. And then she juxtaposes it with the idea of a painting of a woman in a red dress with a a mark, a deforming kind of a mark on her upper lip. So that it is not, the point being is that the woman in the red dress would be projecting the idea of feminine beauty. But the second painting, with the mark on the face, on the woman's upper lip, the same painting, the same woman, the same face, the only difference is there is a mark on her upper lip, like a venereal something or other, right? And then the message becomes the corruption of beauty, or beauty being corrupted. A simple alteration in the projection of the message changes the entire synopsis. The entire abstraction of the piece is altered by that insertion of that simple element of the mark on the face of the woman in the red dress. It is no longer about female beauty, but it is about the corruption of beauty. And in the same way, in these Last of Us games, when they insert certain elements, it changes the synopsis. It changes the fundamental abstractions involved. There are values at play. And the values being projected are very much the result of the certain choices being made by the creators. The certain choices being made has the overall effect of projecting a certain message, projecting a certain interpretation. You know, it would be, man, let us talk about the primary complaint. I know I've already gone over this, but I want to kind of reiterate. What is the primary complaint that people are having about The Last of Us 2? Is it not the lecturing to the public about the morality of acceptance? You know, if the messaging were actually about acceptance, then why present such a divisive, polarized narrative? If it were about acceptance, you would think that you would then present all characters as seemingly equal. All characters fully accepted in their roles. But when the judgment is made that one thing is preferred over another, it is no longer a means of acceptance, but rather what is being projected is a preference. The artist's preference is projected in the choices that the artist makes within the work that is offered to us. And in The Last of Us 2, the villain, the protagonist, or I'm sorry, the antagonist of the story is a group of they're called a Christian cult. I don't know why it's a cult. Maybe it's because they're hunting down and killing homosexuals, right? Because of course, when you think of Christian, that's what you always think of, right? You always think of those people that hate others, that want to hunt down homosexuals and kill them. Anyway, so maybe that's why they preface it with that defining feature, the cult Christians, right? Anyway, think of it. You've got a tranny who kills Joel, Ellie's a lesbian, and the villain are a bunch of Christians that are going around killing said lesbians, right? Said trannies. So they have presented to us almost the most polarizing, divisive narrative they could imagine. And then try to throw our criticism back on our face saying, well, you're just homophobic. This is really about acceptance. Come on, man. If you weren't so close-minded, you wouldn't have a problem. Like, what's your problem? You know what I mean? Like someone pushes you. It's like, oh, what's your problem, man? You don't like being pushed? You know, maybe you're too uptight. Is that what they're trying to say, that we're too uptight? That I'm the one with the problem? Because your narrative choice of cutting Joel's neck at the hands of a tranny that we're not even invested in her backstory? That's why I'm the one with the problem. So what have they done here, man? They have presented to us a world wherein Christians are the primary despotic villain of the story. Men are presented as barbaric and essentially a vehicle for shallowness. You know, is it not possibly a statement about the patriarchy to kill off Joel, the father figure? You know, it would seem then that what is involved is not the morality of acceptance as such, but rather the framing for the messaging of the artist's bias, the artist's preference, the artist's rejection of the supposed patriarchy. You know, or are we to accept that the patriarchy is even a thing? You know, it's assumed by the artist that the patriarchy is a thing. It is therefore the artist's values that are being projected here. The characters and their character arcs, the plot devices, are activist value judgments, stipulating the preferences of the creators rather than the world as it is. Rather than the world as it is. And herein, I think, is the distinction between the two games. You know, what we have presented to us in The Last of Us Part 1 and 2 are opposing worldviews. Part 1 offers a worldview wherein the protagonists, Joel and Ellie, are valued in their natural objective roles of father and daughter, be it surrogate father and daughter. Part 2 offers a worldview wherein the protagonist's value is measured in their subjective sexual identity preferences. One worldview is knowable. You know, we all can understand its features. That's why it resonates. That's why the story of Joel finding healing in the purpose of being a father to Ellie, a protector to Ellie, a guide to Ellie. Ellie finding strength in her surrogate father Joel to face the difficulties of life. This resonates. It has the objective appearance of true life. This seems real. It has recognizable features. The other view that is being offered in The Last of Us Part 2 is objectively shattered, with the character's own subjective determinations being offered as paramount. The first game supposes that these values, these assessments of reality are real. They exist. They are ever present throughout the course of time. With or without our opinion, with or without our approval, they are real. The second game rejects the notion of values as existing in reality, and rather promotes the subjective invention, the redefining of all things. That's why it would seem that Abby's murdering of Joel is so definitive. It's a rejection of the first game. It's a rejection of the essential premise of the first game. It is spitting in the face of the very things that so resonated with us as the audience, as the participant, as the player. My criticism is not that of Abby were it be that Abby were to exist as a real person. It is the role that is being projected. It is the messaging of Abby, the tranny, killing Joel, the father. It is that shattering of objective reality in preference for the subjective, invented, nihilistic world without borders, without knowable attributes. The only thing that is real in the second game is the power of the character. That's why all the female characters in the second game are so masculine, because power is the only attribute that is preferred. The power of Abby to kill Joel. The arrogance of the developers to suggest that Abby is the protagonist is to suggest that power is the only thing that matters. That is the messaging. That is why people are so unimpressed, so offended, because it offends our sense of life to suggest that the only thing that matters is power. The only thing that matters is our projection of our personal subjective views, and one's power over another is the only thing that matters. This is offensive. It offends me as a man. It offends me as a husband. It offends me as a father. It offends me as an American. It offends me as a Christian. The notion that the only thing that matters is power dynamics. The only values that are real are power dynamics. It is animalistic to suppose that such things represent reality. Are we not better than animals? Are we not better than dogs barking over their property, over their piece of property? Are we not better than that? All right, man, God bless. See you guys next time. I'm going to do more videos on the subject because I find that this whole Last of Us Part 2 debacle is interesting. And I think there's much to be said, man, about the controversy that's been stirred up. There's much to be said about the thing that where Naughty Dog has seemingly inserted themselves in the middle of what seems to be kind of a cultural struggle over what is important. Right? And they've stuck themselves right in the middle with this game. All right, man. God bless you guys next time.